Hi, everyone. This is Claire Holton. I'm here with Ambiance Real Estate to discuss Halloween. This is their Halloween podcast. We've got Jason Chu, the broker of Ambiance Real Estate, and Karen Liu, who is also a real estate consultant with Ambiance Real Estate. We're excited to be here today to talk a little bit about probate properties, ghost stories, situations with real estate gone awry, or situations that kind of bring about the Halloween experience.
Well, thank you. Yeah, basically, this is one of our first podcasts, and we'd like to kind of go with the theme. We were talking about stigmatized properties. If you don't know, death, of course, happens. It happens to every one of us. It happens all the time. And in real estate, there can be what they call death on property. And so that means someone has died either of natural causes or unnatural causes, or maybe supernatural causes. But for all those reasons, you have to know what is something that would be a defect in the property or something you would need to disclose, because it affects the character, it affects the sellability of the property. And maybe there's even psychological impacts that it might have either on the person who owns it, the neighborhood, all kinds of things that happen. So Karen, you want to maybe...
Well, let me first talk about what is the actual definition of a stigmatized property. It's a home that includes murder, suicide, sexual assault, haunted, paranormal activity, and natural deaths. Most states do not require this to be disclosed, but because we're in California, we are required to disclose it if the death happened within 3 years.
Interesting. So there are exceptions to that, though. So Civil Code, California Civil Code Section 1710(2) talks about an exception for people who have died of AIDS or AIDS-related illness. So, it was found in a court case that basically, actually, it wasn't a court case. I apologize. It was a clarification in the law, because at first they said that you did not have to disclose that someone had died or what the cause of was. So you would not have to say they died of AIDS, but you would have to disclose there was a death on property. It became a little ambiguous as to what you should or should not say, especially if somebody asks you directly, because you should be truthful when somebody asks you directly about death on property or cause of death on property. But if it's related to AIDS or an AIDS-related illness, you do not have to disclose even the death on that property, let alone the reason for it.
Because it's considered a discrimination.
Yeah, it's discrimination. Yeah,
Disability.
It's a disability under the California law, and basically, because someone cannot pass AIDS from themselves dying in the property, there's no defect in the property. There's nothing that says this house is now a contagious fomite or a location. So there's no way that you can contract AIDS from being in a house after someone's died, passed away, and has been removed from there. So there's really no reason to disclose it. There's some penalties as well, Karen, about if you fail to disclose, you could be penalized for fraud. You could be penalized for not disclosing a material defect. There's actually a case in 1983, Reed versus King, where even after 10 years, the person sued, the buyer sued the seller for not disclosing a mass murder or multiple murder on site. The buyer saying that there was a psychological stigma to the property. They lost the first case, so the seller actually won because it was after 3 years. They didn't want to disclose it, but on appeal, they actually found that there was significant detriment to the buyer, and so they found in favor of the buyer on appeal. So, best thing is if you have a death, obviously within 3 years, disclose. If it's something really major like a mass murder, someone committing suicide by very strange means, then there may be something you want to disclose. Obviously, be careful if there's a disability involved, any kind of things that may kind of cloud what you might want to disclose. It's always good to talk to an attorney and find out whether you should disclose or not.
Okay. Let's talk about our experience as realtors. What kind of ghost stories or haunted houses you guys have shown?
I've had a couple of experiences. I did have not a probate, but a bankruptcy property. And when I arrived at the property, there was, I mean, bullets all over the backyard. There was a
Wow.
dead dog in the crawl space, and there was a leash hanging from a tree. So it looked like they had strangled the dog. And it was something I'd never experienced before. With bankruptcy properties, they are scary. It's like walking into a war zone. I mean, the people that lived there had a terrible reputation for being really bad people. They pulled all the sockets were pulled out. Everything, it looked like somebody was very angry before they left. So they really destroyed the house. And so we had the property listed as is, and we had to disclose all the information we learned about these people
So
and the
that's
dead
interesting.
dog.
So there's a dead dog, not a dead person,
Mhm.
but you still disclosed it.
I still did, yes. I felt
I don't think there's I mean,
comfortable to do so. Even if it wasn't required, I thought
Yeah.
this is important. I mean, I hadn't even removed the dead dog and we had people coming into the property.
wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was co-listing, and the woman she has a lot of bankruptcy properties that come in, so she had gotten this one. And it was really just as is. And when we got there, this was out in Half Moon Bay. So once we got there, we noticed the dead dog and all of these issues that came up with the property. And then
So I think for me, the dead dog, I mean, pets die all the time. And so if your pet dies, that's not something you necessarily have to disclose unless there's a reason why the building, maybe there was a mold problem or there was some kind of contagion in the building that caused the pet to die, that would be definitely a material defect in the property. But a pet dying is not something that I would normally have to disclose. In this case, though, I think you certainly err on the side of caution. But what's interesting is that the people caused the death of the dog in the sense of hanging it or maybe even beating. I don't know, right? The details are not there. But the fact that there may be some kind of psychological stigma to that is a very good reason to go ahead and disclose. You mentioned bankruptcy. That's one, actually, there's something in California Civil Code section 1710.2 that talks about banks not having to disclose death on property. That's mainly because some corporate banks, say, for example, ING in Pennsylvania, or PNC is also in Pennsylvania. I don't know why I'm thinking of Pennsylvania banks today. But they don't know what happened on the property. They're far away. They have no idea. And so they are exempted from disclosure of that information. Now, if a realtor's involved, though, there's some question there as to whether they need to. I would certainly, as a realtor, disclose anything I knew. It's a good practice. But the bank itself, which now owns the property through bankruptcy, does not have to.
Precisely.
Yeah. I've got two stories actually about kind of suspicious circumstances or deaths on the property. I actually used to manage a property on Fulton and 19th. Can talk about the address because it's all over the internet anyway. But I was about 14 years old, I think. It's hard to remember, to be honest. I was a teenager, early teens, and I was cleaning up for the landlord. I was sweeping. I was doing kind of basic maintenance things, just kind of getting my first jobs, and there was a significant smell coming out of one of the apartments. And I was asked by the other tenants and the landlord to do a check, and so I knocked on the door and opened up and see what the smell was. I opened up and there was in the bathtub a torso of a woman, basically the tenant who had been living there, and her head was cut off, her arms were cut off, her legs were cut off. Just the torso remained in the in the tub. They later found the head, I believe, in the trunk of the person who was the subtenant. So this tenant had actually rented without letting the landlord know, had rented to a subtenant.
So the subtenant killed her.
Yes.
Wow.
Subtenant killed her.
That's terrible.
And the arms and legs, I believe, were found in trash bags in Golden Gate Park.
Wow.
So that was my first experience with that, and certainly something to disclose. I do know that the landlord chose not to disclose it. When they sold, they did not sell through me. I was not the realtor. I found that objectionable. I did let them know because I saw the listing and I asked about the death on property, and the realtor said, "I don't know what you're talking about." What? I said, "Well, you should know then that this has happened, and you should talk to the owner as to whether that, they need to disclose or not. They never did. And I find that kind of objectionable. So for the same
Sure.
reasons we talked about.
But you witnessed, I mean, you witnessed the
I didn't,
body.
I saw the body, I did not, or the torso, not the full
Yeah.
body, but some of the cleanup was done by me as well.
Oh, wow.
Hazmat suits and everything. I mean, the coroner came in and did as best as they could, but even professional cleaning, I was still there. The other one was actually an open house. I was viewing an open house on a tour. I was not the listing agent. I was just kind of looking at houses in the area. This is in the outer Richmond district of San Francisco. And again, I noticed a smell. I don't know why, but my nose must be a detector or some kind. But I was walking around the bedroom and I said, something really stinks. This house was a wreck. The sewage pipes below the 4-inch, steel pipes were broken. It was clear that the owner was not taking care of the place, an elderly person. Now, certainly that person, he died on the property. The gentleman who had owned the property died on property. That was disclosed. What was not disclosed was that as we were walking through, I noticed a smell and I kind of noticed a loose floorboard in the bedroom. And I kind of pushed down and it wasn't nailed down. So the board flipped open like this. His wife was in the floorboards or under the floorboards, I should say. So he had wanted to keep her nearby after she passed, apparently in the house. And he had wrapped her up in trash bags, sealed it up and put it underneath the floorboards. So this was a home in the outer Richmond district.
Is that legal? Can
It
you?
is not legal. No, there's nothing legal about it. And clearly the gentleman had some mental issues or he was very distraught or something happened, but no, it is not normal to bury your loved one inside the floorboards of your home. But yeah, needless to say, my client did not bid on that property. It was sold and it was eventually renovated and flipped. And the person who bought it, I'm not sure what they disclosed, but I'm sure they probably disclosed the gentleman's death. So, yeah.
Wow,
No hauntings
pretty
yet.
intense stories. How about you, Karen?
I personally have not experienced any of these, thankfully. But I do have clients that are super superstitious because most of my clients are Chinese.
Not just superstitious, but
It's
super superstitious.
Really? I've heard there are some clients out there that are really particular with superstition.
Yes, I can speak from the Chinese culture because I'm Chinese. I don't know about the other cultures, but I think the Japanese and Korean should be quite
Japanese.
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not talking about cute ghosts like Totoro or
No. No. So I had this client, every time we go see a house, he would ask me this question. The first question he asked would be, who owns this house? And the second would be, anybody died in there? What we do is we get the disclosure first because that is so important to him. I have to ask the listing agent if anyone died there. If not, then he will go see it. And some clients, because they go see open house on the weekends by themselves and they don't know if anybody died in there, after they found out that somebody died on the property, they would go home and have this, what's it called, pomelo leaf to wash themselves.
Oh, enter pomelo leaf.
Yeah,
really?
it's kind of like garlic.
Oh, interesting. Kind of
Off.
like what is it that you use?
Sage.
Sage, yeah. Sage helps with spirits, right?
Yeah, and then they would jump over a bucket of fire to burn off any bad
A
luck.
bucket of fire?
Yeah.
How do they create the fire in the bucket?
So they
just light a match and
put a
then
bunch of
jump
newspaper
over.
and throw a cigarette in.
Jump over.
I shouldn't make fun. I mean, basically, yeah. Just probably some special papers you can buy.
What's it called? Joss money, Joss paper. Right,
paper.
Joss paper. Yeah, that's something the Chinese use also. The more traditional Chinese, when after they bought a house, they will perform this ceremony or ritual, whatever you call it. The oldest person in the family, usually grandma, they would have this kind of form. It's like a form that you burn off to hell. Yeah, they write the family name and what they bought the property, and then they would burn it with a bunch of Joss paper and hell banknotes to just in case there's ghosts in the house.
So you're kind of buying them off. So you tell them, hey, we bought it this time. So after this time, please don't.
Yeah,
don't haunt
like
us
take
or-
this money, take this take this gift and please just move on.
I know
Yeah.
in Bali, they do a lot of presents for households. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but a lot of people in Bali, whenever anybody moves in, they bring all these gifts of like fruit and flowers, and it's like blessing the house,
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah,
which is really interesting. It's kind of
you
fascinating.
know what? I suggest that for our next podcast, we all go to Bali and we make sure that we investigate and make sure that that's.
I'd be happy to go to Bali. There is the Muerta, the Day of the Dead, right? Isn't that, what is it called? The Day of the Dead here
Actually,
in
I'm not sure.
San Francisco?
Dia de los Muertos.
Mortis.
Hey,
There we go.
there you go.
Yeah, you're totally shaped out for
Day of the
Halloween.
Dead, yeah.
I have actually not been to the festival. Have you guys been?
To me, though, I think I always thought that that was more of a celebration of life. So the fact that, you know, yes, you're honoring the dead, but the fact that you have a vibrant life and one that you can, you know, enjoy and share with family. And I think to me that day is actually much more of a celebration of life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could be wrong, but that's what I feel every time I'm hanging out with friends. Yeah. Yeah.
About honoring those that have passed and cherishing their life.
Yeah.
Sorry, distracted. Let's talk about some of the haunted properties in other countries.
So I know Japan, I was looking at, I like to research properties and where to find, you know, really good, you know, prices on properties. And I looked at Japan, I started to do a lot of research and saw all these properties for $12, $10, $9,
Wow.
$11, $30. And I'm like, what is going on with this? So I started to look into these properties and I found out someone died on the property. And that's why they're being sold for so cheap. And there's hundreds and hundreds all over. I mean, well, thousands and thousands of properties that you can buy for $12 or $30.
Are they just haunted or are they fixer uppers?
Haunted. Some of them are fixer uppers, but when you look at it, it has the bare bones to where it's not, you know, like how do you say, a contractor's dream. It's more, it can be turnkey ready.
Oh, wow.
I looked and I found it pretty interesting.
Are there terms or conditions associated with this low price? I mean, one thing to be superstitious and then buy a property at a very, very low price, but you know, like I see things in Spain and Italy where you can buy a villa or buy a home for $1,500 or $1,000.
You have to rehab and do a lot of, and it needs a lot of work.
Right.
I've seen those as well in Italy.
Yeah, and the government will make sure that you do the work and you're creating jobs in the community and these kind of things. And you know, the requirements are sometimes pretty stringent. So it's difficult to do those. It's the ones in Japan, are they like that or?
The ones in Italy, I remember looking at, it's usually small towns where it's mostly elderly people. There's a lot of young, vibrant people. So they're trying to bring people in for, you know, but there's a catch. A lot of these buildings are run down and they're really disheveled and they really need a couple $100,000 to put into the properties. The ones in Japan are a little bit turnkey ready from what I've seen.
Okay.
And in good, you know, areas. So they're not completely on the outskirt of a ghetto or anything of that sort.
Are they like traditional Japanese houses or are they modern?
They look, the ones I saw seem to be pretty traditional. Yeah. Yep. Just kind of a hobby of mine, looking at Japanese houses.
Given movies like Ringu, I'm not sure I want to be.
Yeah.
Right. I know, right? I love that movie. The
You watched
Ringu, of course.
That was my first, that's actually my first
Ringu.
horror movie when I actually accidentally watched it when I was 6 years old.
Good films.
The first one, isn't the first one with the little girl that was drowned in a well, but
that's Ring. I
That's right.
believe. Then there's the one with Ringu, which is totally different.
Yeah.
It's in Japan, I think.
I don't remember.
The original was
there's-
Japanese and they
wait.
remade it.
Is there like a Ring and Ring 2?
Probably Ring 2?
There's a
That's
Ring
probably what we're thinking
trilogy.
about,
They
yeah.
haven't created the third one yet, but also a very scary film. Never want to be in a well.
Never. Or have your TV on when you're at
Or-
night.
yeah.
Unfortunately,
Or have
nobody has
static
VHS
TV.
tapes anymore, so we're okay with that one, you know.
Yeah, now it's a USB.
Yeah.
7 days.
After you see this Netflix 7 days later. So anything else we want to talk about today, or?
I guess we've talked about a couple of different stories on the mystery of Halloween and potential ghosts.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
the best, the sum of this is basically if you feel that there's something material or something about the property that you should disclose, because in all fairness, you would want the person who's buying it to know. Just
Absolutely.
absolutely, you know, good judgment and being fair. Disclose it, you know, and encourage your sellers to disclose it. But you know, if there's anything regarding a disability, you know, like AIDS or HIV, then please, you know, understand that that would be discriminatory to disclose. If there's something else in terms of, say, COVID-19, or there's some kind of question as to whether you should or should not, it's always a good idea to talk to an attorney. That's what they went to school for, and that's what they do every day. They can guide you. That's the best way to go. But, you know, ultimately, try to do what's fair, and try to understand that if you're the listing agent, or you're listing realtor, or you're your seller, then you would probably want somebody to know. And if that's the case, then tell them. Use your good
Agreed.
judgment.
100%.
Mhm.
Well, happy Halloween, everybody. Hope you have some time to go out and do some trick-or-treating with COVID-19. Starting
Stay
to
safe.
stay
Stay
safe.
safe, happy, and eat lots of candy.
And keep both masks on, not just the Frankenstein or the ghost, but keep your mask on. You know, stay apart as much as you can. Delta is certainly still out there, so you know, even if you're vaccinated, understand there can be breakthrough cases. Just be safe, folks. Thank you,
All right.
Karen. Thank you,
All right.
Claire.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.